Hello, everyone. This is Iowa Joe, and let me take a minute and tell you about Zencaster. Have you ever wanted to start your own podcast but didn't know where to begin? If you have, you've realized that you need a lot of different tools and services. Those days are over. With Zencaster's all-in-one podcasting platform, you can create your podcast all in one place and distribute to Spotify, Apple, and other major destinations. Zencaster is now the all-in-one solution making podcasting easy. It's the ultimate web-based podcasting solution. It provides high-quality audio and video podcast production and hosting. With a full suite of professional tools, podcasters can seamlessly record, produce, and publish studio quality content all from one dashboard. Being a creator has never been easier. Now, when Nick and I started Outback Packers a few years back, we were in the same position and needed a place to start, so we decided to give Zencastr a try. It was great. We could record, edit, and publish our podcast in easy-to-follow steps. Even if later on you decide to rebrand like we did into a HANA Packers edition, Zencastr makes it easy to do without losing anything. I'm saying anything. It's like we stepped back in and had no issues whatsoever. Mike and I are so happy to be back with Zencastr. You'll also find other hosting sites giving you big ideas about helping you gain listeners and downloads and the chance to monetize. But when you read the fine print, you must hit certain goals to obtain those things. Zencastr makes it easy. It's now super easy to record a podcast with Zencastr. Log in using your browser and start recording a high-quality podcast right away. Record studio quality sound and up to 4K audio with your guests. Feel a sense of zen knowing Zencastr's multi-layered backups ensure you always have your recordings in the highest quality, even if the connection is unstable. Go to zencastr.com/pricing and use my code OUTBACK and you'll get 30% off your first month of any Zencastr paid plan. I want you to have the same easy experience as I do for all my podcasting and content needs. It's time to share your story.
Aloha and welcome back to another episode of the HANA Packers Edition podcast, the podcast where two dudes from halfway around the world talk everything green and gold. I'm Mike. Yes, facial hair fell off this week, and that's Iowa Joe. Joe,
Mine's
I know this
still
is gonna
there.
Don't worry, it'll be back in like a week or two. But Joe, that just shows where we are in the dog days of the off season that we have to talk facial hair changes. But no, this past week the NFL released schedules. The Packers, we know where Green Bay is going to be at all points of the 2024 season, and I know that where you wanted to start was tipping your cap to the Packers social media team for stepping up their game to get with the modern times on this. So Joe, your thoughts there?
I really enjoyed it. I mean, I think everybody enjoyed it. And I don't think you can point at just one individual on why the Packers are stepping up their social media game. I think everybody in Packer Nation were calling them out for their shitty ass social media stuff. Last year's release was pretty good, but it was still at mad level. I don't know if you remember what last year's was, but I went back and watched it. And it was kind of like the old infomercial style music where you'd get the collection of music and, well, this too gives you this. And they were showing pictures of the team and whatever. But it was all right, but it was still meh. But this year's was great. And, of course, we get the great soundbite from Jair, don't bring a peanut butter to a jelly fight. And Larry McCarron's, goofy finger, how about these hands? And stuff like that. So they're really stepping it up. So yeah, for this release, I really enjoyed it, and I think most Packer fans enjoyed it for a scheduled release. And like you said, we're kind of in the dog days of content creation where we get excited for a scheduled release video.
But no, this is kind of, sort of an unofficial ceremonial start to the 2024 season for fans, at least, because the layman gets to go out, start to plan out if they want to start, hunting for tickets. I know the tickets themselves haven't been released, but, people with connections, you can start to make those calls to kind of figure out when you'll be able to be in town and things like that. So I know it's and even for for people like me, like the lone Lambo game I've been to was in 2019, and it kind of came out of the fact that I had a wedding to go to in Ann Arbor, and the wife and I said, "Ha, let's make the overnight trip to Lambeau afterwards." So because it just lined up that was Green Bay playing the Raiders in Lambeau that following Sunday, or the Sunday after the wedding. So it was just like, yeah, let's do it. And as we left our 30s, we showed that we are no longer fit for those kind of trips on a regular basis. But
Yeah,
just
yeah.
just putting
I
context
get
to
you.
why this is important for everyone. But anything
Yeah.
off the cuff that stuck out to you on this one, Joe, for in terms of the schedule?
Well, I really don't have a dog in this particular fight, but it is kind of weird that they gave the 3 rival games to the gold package. I obviously I know there's a big fight between green package, gold package, and all that stuff, and I understand it, you know, but it's kind of weird that they gave all 3 divisional games, the Vikings, the Lions, and the Bears, to the gold package and left the other games for the green package. Now, that's not saying they don't have great games for the green package. I mean, let's go ahead and go through it.
Yeah.
I mean, if you look at the preseason game, they've got, or preseason games, they've got 2 away games and 1 home game. Cleveland, Denver, and then at home against Baltimore. So we all know that they cut away 1 preseason game, so they're down to 3. Nothing there. I like the preseason games per se because a lot of times you get a little bit better football among them because you've got guys that are fighting for roster spots and guys that are fighting for their careers in the NFL. So they're putting on a show more often than not. But I know that a lot of people don't like it. Just real quick, what are your thoughts on the preseason?
Yeah, I'm just kind of glad that they're playing all AFC teams. I've always preferred that you see, like you said, they're not playing starter on starter, if at all, very much. But it is nice to see different teams come into the mix, so that you're just seeing a different jersey than you're used to on a regular basis. So, but other than that, like you said, it doesn't really float my boat either way, kind of thing. But I do appreciate that they're going different places with it. Um, Also, I don't really, since I'm not ever really in town to go to a preseason game, it doesn't bother me that this is the year they happen to have 2 away and 1 home preseason game.
Right.
I have no idea how filled Lambeau is for a preseason game. I'm sure it does draw a good, a decent crowd compared to the rest of the NFL. But
Well, I will say from my limited experience with the preseason, it's still jam packed. I mean,
okay,
this is the same crowd that fills the stadium for a practice in family night. So,
right,
they still pretty much fill the crowd for preseason. But again, it's not terrific football because a lot of times, like you said, they're not playing starters, they're playing second, third, and guys fighting for the roster. But a lot of times you see a little bit better out of it just because, again, you've got that guy who's, you know, fifth string, sixth string that maybe not even be on an NFL roster the next week. Or like Lou Brown said in Major League, bagging groceries in a week, you know, uh, type thing. So they're going to go out there and they're going to try putting on a show in hopes that if they don't make it with the Packers, they're going to be able to make it with, another team. So, I mean, yeah, not great football, but Packer fans would still fill Lambeau with
yeah.
the preseason game. So
But yeah, so Green Bay, as everyone knew before the schedule release, Green Bay gets the season kicked off on a super road game in Brazil. Green Bay playing an international game for the second time in 3 years, so they will get the season kicked off on a Friday night. I believe it's, hold on.
yeah, it's
Yeah,
Friday.
Friday night. So, or I'm just checking the time because I'm just thinking, but no, it's South America, so it's still in the same time zone. Now it's
Yeah,
not across the pond. So
uh, we Nick and I had Wendell Ferreira on, and he's only like an hour behind me. So 7:15 here would be 8:15 there. So it's not a big time change. It's just the feeling of going that big of a distance from the north to the south.
Yeah. And I'm assuming that the team is going to practice in Brazil, so I don't think that they'll have too much issue with getting acclimated. It's also week 1, and the they have a whole week off, I think, nowadays between the preseason. Yeah, they basically have a whole week off between the last preseason game and the
It's
first.
almost 2 weeks, isn't it?
Yeah, because of how the games are scheduled, or
Because
yeah,
they
it's just short. Yeah, it's just short.
instead of having the 4th game, they've made it a bye.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I don't think Green Bay should have any sort of lag in terms of like travel or fatigue, jet lag or anything like that, unless I just can't see them going down there right before the game, because you want to get used to the environment, the surroundings, all that kind of stuff. So I
now
figure they'll take a longer trip down there.
they could, but don't quote me because I don't know. I've never been down there. I couldn't tell you, but I think they would probably treat it like going to California or something, where they, instead of leaving on Saturday, they might leave on that Thursday to give them a couple days down there to get the feel of the field and stuff like that.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
I don't think they're going to take a week and go down there. It just might be
Yeah,
a
not
few
that long,
extra
but
days.
like the 2-3 days, kind of like they did for the London game kind of thing. Yeah. So,
and that one's going to be an interesting game just because the international. And has anybody ever confirmed, are they going to be able to wear green jerseys in because isn't that the rumor that they don't allow green anything
something
in
like
those
that.
stadiums?
Yeah, so I have no idea what that's going to be. I'm just trying to think. I'm assuming that Philly would run with some kind of extreme color rush version of their blacked out jersey, and Green Bay would go with their white one, or this would be one of the ones for the fanboys to go with the all yellow look. But I know it's gonna
and
be
if
kind of
they
funky
had
no matter what they do.
The old school
That would be,
throwbacks,
yeah, is the
with
50s,
the
brown and the navy.
blue and that would be the perfect time to do that. But I don't know. I really doubt that they're going to throw a fit if either. Well, of course, the Packers are the away team, so they'd be wearing their white jerseys anyway. But I really don't think anybody's going to throw a fit about the NFL teams, because they all knew going into it that those two teams had those colors in their uniforms.
Watch this be the reason that they made that stupid rule about the second alternate helmet, because they're like, oh shit, those two teams need an extra alternate helmet, and we got to make it look like it's, we're not playing favorites or anything like that. We're letting all the teams do it. So look over here, fans. But, yeah, that would be the most NFL thing. But yep, after week 1, it gets back to sort of your regular paid program. The Packers then face 2 AFC opponents. And honestly, I think the thing that kind of stands out to me this season is it's a pretty even stretch in terms of like home and road splits, where you're not like, oh, this season is front loaded with home games before the bye, or it's front loaded with road games and stuff. I do like that we're kind of going like 1-2, 1-1, 2-1. Obviously that's not exactly it, but it's more of a more regular than like, oh shoot, they're on the road for like a month straight. I know that the NFL has kind of gone away from that in the last couple decades, but I do remember there was a time where it's like, when did Green Bay last play home kind of thing and stuff. And
the only one that kind of fits that is they play at home against San Francisco and then Miami, and then they go on the road to Detroit and then Seattle. So that right there is the only one that really kind of but it shouldn't be too bad.
Yeah. And I think that's the NFL trying to quote unquote throw the Packers a bone, where they have that short, because they're going for we'll get there, but I think that's because they're playing the Niners on a Sunday afternoon, or it's the late window on Fox, and then they're turning around for the Thursday night game. So I do feel like that's a little bit of the league being like, okay, yeah, you're playing the short turnaround, but you're gonna get both the games at home kind of thing. So I do think that's
we'll get to that in a minute. Otherwise, there's some things there, but the two AFC, those two should be the interesting games because you've got Anthony Richardson with the Colts, who before he got injured last year was looking relatively good, and then I'm really looking forward to the Titans game, and I'm going to tell you the reason why was because when Will Levis came out for the draft, his biggest comp was Jordan Love. And it's not just the talking heads that were giving that. I believe when I plugged both of them into
athletically, they're almost the same. Yeah.
When you plug them into mock draftables, the big comp was Jordan Love for Will Levis. So we're going to have basically two guys of the same athletic wise against each other, and it's going to be interesting to see how they play against each other. So. And of course the Colts are kind of an up and coming team. They're a young team like the Packers are, but they're different because they didn't have a guy at quarterback that set 4 years before taking the starting position. They had a guy they had basically had to throw out to the Wolves, and same with the Titans. So. And those should be pretty fun games. And again, it's teams that we haven't seen in a while. Now, the Colts are going to be a pain because it seems like the last few times they've faced the Colts, they've gotten their ass handed to them. So, let's hope the curse is broken on that one.
Well, I know part of that is that we just didn't want to ever beat Andrew Luck. So that was a big part of it. And then you just had that really funky game in Indy the last time when it was Rodgers against Phillip Rivers. So, it'll be interesting because they're breaking in. Hafley's system is going to be getting broken in, and what I do like is that those first three games. I know Levis not as much as oh god, I can't think of his name. Hurts and Richardson, but those are three guys who do like to get out of the pocket, get on the move to different degrees. And Hurts and Richardson will obviously be a bigger part of the run game than Levis will. And that's kind of one of the calling cards of Hafley's defense is, he was running a lot of his single high looks to take away the QB run game and, stay +1 in the box while also having flexibility to disguise what his intentions were on the back end and all. So I'm curious to see how that all works into each other. And then stepping out a little bit bigger picture, we'll get to these other two games, but I do think it's interesting that Green Bay has the bye in week 10, but by week 8, they'll have played the whole of the AFC South. In the meantime, they'll have only played one division game, one NFC North game in week 4. So, and obviously that's where we're going next. But I do prefer that. I've always preferred that you get more of your AFC, your cross-conference games out of the way early, because especially nowadays you hear about how, we were kind of just talking about in the preseason where starters don't play a lot. But for Green Bay, there's a lot of, your new defensive system. You're going to have a lot of young guys playing. The O-line situation, how funky are they going with the O-line? Love is getting into his second year. Some of these teams have seen him before. So how many of them are really adjusting back to him? The whole 9 yards on all of that. So I do think it gives Green Bay a decent runway that half of their first 8 games are AFC teams where, not that they don't matter as much, but if you drop 1 or 2 of those, they don't hurt you as much in the standings. If you end up tied with another NFC team, that's one of the barometers is conference, division. I forget which order, but conference and division record hold the most water and stuff when it's head-to-head records are the same. So I do like that for Green Bay's sake, but. Week 4, Green Bay welcomes their first division rival into Lambeau. As you noted, it is a gold package game. Same with you. I don't read too much into that. I do think there is something to it, but it's not in my place to be, the person that's like, they need to, F the gold package and all that kind of stuff. I think that's for people at much higher pay wages than I am at to make decisions on that, because I do understand the historical significance of the Milwaukee fans and what they did. And, there is such a big reason for why Green Bay is the Packers are still in Green Bay. But the cynical tinfoil hat side of me is like, oh, what if this is one of those, like, what are you guys going to do? Like, we're giving you this opportunity, or they're like looking at it in terms of if we give them divisional games, they'll definitely go to those. So I don't know. I tried to not to read too much into it, but it, like you brought up, Joe, it was an eyebrow raiser when you kind of go through it when the schedule is released and you're like, oh, the gold package games are the 3 divisional games. And on one hand, it's like maybe it'll draw the local fans out or the Milwaukee fans out, but also uh, making them divisional opponents. Those are close, right? For those opponents, those are people, hypothetically traveling from closer distances to get to the game. So they would make the effort to buy out those tickets and stuff. So
Well, and that's the devil's advocate of that is, yeah, I can see your point of maybe you
yeah,
gave them the divisional games because they would be more apt to get those fans up there. But then devil's advocate is, well, those are also more valuable tickets, so they can make more money off of them in the resale than they can, you know, Tennessee or the Colts or what else is Houston or something like that.
yeah,
They can basically get done. But let me just say this: it doesn't matter gold package, green package, whatever. You've got people who are going to sell their tickets no matter what.
yeah,
And I don't care if you're gold package, green package, but if you're just getting the lifetime season tickets just to flip them, then maybe you need to take yourself off the list because all you're
yeah,
doing is trying to make money off of it.
yeah,
Whereas everybody knows there's like 100,000 names on that list that would go to these games all the time if they could get the tickets, but they can't get the tickets because you've got McGreedy over here who's just buying their share of tickets because they can flip them for profit.
yeah.
So I don't care if you're green package, gold package, whatever. If you're
Just go to
selling
the
your
game.
tickets, yeah,
Yeah,
go to the game. If you're selling your tickets, you're in the wrong. Unless you have a reason for not being able to go to the game.
right, right.
There.
But
I've got my one milk, my one stand out of the way.
yeah, so I would say that game against the Vikings, I would say that's the first, turning point of the season. I know the Eagles are a measuring stick game, but it's week 1. The game it's an international game, and who knows what's going to happen with that one. I feel like adrenaline is going to be weirdly high and stuff, and who knows what the field's going to be like and all that stuff. So
Yeah,
this
we could
Vikings
have
game
another
is
Canada on our hands where
yeah,
they couldn't even use
yeah.
the friggin' end zones because they
So,
were all.
honestly, I do wonder if that's why the game is on a Friday. I'm sure like it's part of Brazil's scheduling, and that was when the field was available and all that kind of stuff. But it wouldn't make me that surprised if the NFL was kind of pleased that the game is scheduled for a Friday. So if shit hits the fan, they're like, oh, Philly, like just make sure you keep because we're the away team, so it's like Philly, just make sure Lincoln Financial is free for Sunday, just in case. Just make sure the grounds crew has the end zones painted. So, but yeah, so this Vikings game, the first divisional game, especially the first divisional home game, that's always a big deal in my opinion. And
And the Vikings are in flux because who's going to be starting? Is it going to be Sam Darnold? Is it going to be JJ McCarthy? Is it going to be, I don't know, who else is quarterback up there now? I know it's Darnold. I know it's McCarthy.
yeah,
There's one other one I can't think of off the top of my head, but
some other retread. Yeah, it's escaping my
uh,
mind.
are they going to be meshed in with Addison and Jefferson? Are they, how's the running attack going to hold up? Is their offensive line any good? Same thing with the Packers. How's the defense doing? How's the offensive line holding up? So it is really kind of a measuring stick because I don't care what year it is, how the teams are. It's a division rival. They're always played tough, and the Packers have struggled against the Vikings. If it wasn't for Kirk Cousins tearing his Achilles last year, that could have been a complete loss. So the Packers are always in a dogfight with division rivals. So the Eagles are the measuring stick. The Colts and the Titans could be issues, but Minnesota is really going to be the test, no matter who's
Yeah,
at quarterback.
you got to win your division first. That's always step one on the checklist to making the postseason. Win your division to stamp your ticket to the postseason. Then week 5, LaFleur goes to see old friend. He gets to go and see his old friend in Los Angeles. So we play the Rams on the road. Then it's back-to-back home games, the Cardinals and the Texans. Anything in that 3-game stretch that kind of sticks out to you there, Joe? Or
well, I'm wondering which ex-Cardinal we're going to bring onto the team that's going to tear up the Cardinals when they show up, because it was Devondre and it was Razul. Who else? I think we just signed a guy
Lester
that
Smith was with the
Smith. So,
He's
is
gonna
he
go
going to
catch a
be,
touchdown pass.
or are they going to bring in another guy from the Cardinals to tear them up? But Houston is going to be because they played well above expectations last year with the rookie quarterback, with all the guys that they've brought in. D'Amico Ryans, has done a hell of a job down there. So that one, out of all of them, I'm really excited for. Jacksonville is the next one, and I'm going to go ahead and jump there. Should be another one, because you got Doug Peterson down there, you got Trevor Lawrence. What's he gonna do? And the Packers have struggled for a long ass time in Florida, so
also
hopefully.
Kind of the same with the Texans. I feel like we always play kind of weird games against both those teams. The Jaguars, like you said, we've really struggled. We've really struggled down in Florida as a whole, but especially against the Jags. I know we beat them to open the 2016 season, but that game felt a lot more back and forth than it should have been. And then, the Texans and Green Bay and the Texans, we've had some kind of funky battles with them too. So it'll be really interesting to see how they team up. And then week 9 going into the bye. Yes, I can count. The second division game, the Packers host the Lions. The second big measuring stick game. Everyone talks about splitting the season into quarters. I know that's a little harder with the 17th game, but for all intents and purposes, closing out the first half of the season against a division opponent going into the bye, I like how that game sets up, where it's like, let's punch these guys in the mouth, let's get this win, and then let's go and enjoy our time off. I do like how that little wrinkle in the schedule turned out for the Packers there.
And I like the mid-season buys anyway, because then if you've got a team that's beat up, you've got that week to be able to try to catch things back up. So Detroit, always a measuring stick. They've been putting together some pretty solid drafts the last couple of years. Dan Campbell's got a hell of a coaching staff up there. So it's always going to be an interesting game with them. And again, that's another team we've had issues with for the last couple of years. So it would be, like you said, another measuring stick game.
Yep. And then coming out of the bye, Green Bay has a second bye. I'm kidding. But I guess a little more than a bye, because we do have to go on the road for it. But at Chicago, first look at, I don't know what the hell they're going to do. Personally, I don't think they should start Caleb, but they probably will, because the Bears are dumb like that.
Well, who else are they going to start right now? I mean,
I wouldn't start him behind that old line. But that's just me.
That's why, let's just face it. That's why the Bears haven't been able to bring in a quarterback, because they don't have anything to protect him. They have some solid receiving options. I will give them that. DJ Moore is one of the best receivers in the league right now. Who knows what Keenan Allen's going to do? Didn't they just draft a guy?
Yeah, Rome Odunze.
Yeah, Odunze. He was a top guy for a lot of the talking heads in the draft. So and then of course you got Kmet at tight end, and so they have guys, but like you said, their offensive line is a big question mark. So, and again, that's why the Bears struggle with developing a quarterback, because instead of bringing in somebody that he can sit behind, they're just going to throw him out there week 1 and say, "Here, kid, swim."
Yep. So there'll be good to see where the two franchises are at. We expect that Green Bay is on the rise, and we'll see if the Bears are treading water or continuing to be the quarterback killers that they are, and not in the way you want your team to be. The following week, week 12, the big test, I think the most important game of the third quarter of the season. The 49ers come into Lambeau. It feels like when the 49ers have come to Lambeau in the regular season, they've been just injured all hell in the past decade. So it'll be really interesting to see what they're at. It feels like every other year they alternate between being the expected champion and being just a complete gutter ball in terms of just being injured all over the place at key positions. I feel like that's sort of been their story the past several years. So it'll be really interesting to see where the Niners are. And then we get into that weird spot of the schedule, like we noted, where they play back-to-back Thursday night games. The first one, they're going to be hosting the Dolphins on NBC. I believe that's the Thanksgiving game.
Yep.
And then the week after that, they go to Detroit. And that'll be the standard Thursday night game. So,
and then
like
it's
I said,
the Sunday night game for Seattle. So it's a weird stretch.
Yeah, and like I said, not the Sunday night game for the Niners, but it is the later window of the standard broadcast games.
And then
the
just
Niners
looking
games.
at the Monday night game with the Saints after Seattle. So it's like a complete weird jump around of schedule.
Yeah. So main thing, like I said, if we had to pick, you win the Niner game and you kind of just let the cards fall on the Dolphins game. This is going to be another one. It'll be really interesting to see how Hafley's system goes against this Dolphins team that has just speed oozing out of its eyeballs, but also kind of like we talked about the Niners, who knows what version of the Dolphins are going to show up to Lambeau in week 13, because every one of those guys is an injury question mark.
Yeah, the whole Tua not having a concussion thing will happen again. You know, I know we got to kind of speed through this because we've got something else to do after this, but that whole situation makes me sick, and that should have never happened. He was totally concussed. It was not a back issue. That was concussion.
And that game was so non-competitive, there was no reason for him to keep playing in that game. I don't remember what the score was, but it was one of those, it's like, why? Like, you didn't even have words after why when they're like, oh, he's coming out for the third quarter. It's like, why? Like, no. Like, we saw what happened to this dude going into halftime. Just don't.
That dude had no idea where the hell he was at, and he was just
not.
Yeah, so... But anyway, San Francisco, Miami should be real. And then it's going to be a hard stretch any way you look at it. Because like I said, you got 49ers, you got Dolphins, you got Lions again. You got Seattle, who's got a new coach, new systems up there. And then you go into the Saints again. So, I mean, you've got a long stretch of things that you're going to hope that you can go at least 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You're gonna hope you're gonna at least go 3-2, but you could honestly go out of it 0-5, or you could go out of it 5-0. You don't know. So I mean, you hope out of hopes that you're gonna at least come out of it 3-2. And then just to kind of finish out, we go to Minnesota. I mean, that would be a lot better in December, and for a December game to be indoors, even though I know it's more fun to be in the outdoors. And then we don't know the date of the Chicago game. We just know it's the last. On my schedule, it just says TBD.
Yeah, it's funny because I have the team one open. It says TBD, and I have a couple other ones open that are saying it is Sunday, but I'm sure that they will adjust that depending on how the races are looking. And
really, we gotta. When is it they start the flexes? Isn't it like after week 10 or something that they start?
I think it's earlier nowadays. Well, okay, because there's so many different kind of flex rules now, so I forget what the exact ones are, but I think we're gonna hear about that game by about middle of the season, because they'll have sort of decided like, hey, both these teams are looking pretty good, and that NFC North race or that NFC top half race is heating up. So, and also, I can see Green Bay getting shuffled over if they're, if they start the season, let's say 6-2, 7-1. I can see that game being put on the Saturday because the Packers, when they're good, they're a draw. They're a draw no matter what. But you know, the haters are gonna hate, and the fans are gonna question. The fans will look at one of two ways. The pessimistic ways is like, why do we have a one less day of preparation? But on the other end of it, it's like the league is recognizing that you're a good team and that you're a financial draw. So they're going to give you a pseudo prime time in a regular season on a Saturday game.
Conspiracy thought though, because last year when we had all that shit weather, they had to move the Bills game. With this being the time of year that possibly could happen, do you think it's TBD because they're going to wait until they can see what the weather is like so they don't have to? Because if they get another storm like they did that year or last year, there is nobody going to be able to get into Lambeau. Trust me, I know that they're going to have their snow removals and that up there, and there are people lining up to shovel. But if they're shutting down highways and that, you're not getting anybody anywhere.
Yeah, I definitely could see it being a possibility. My only thing against that is I'm kind of like, I don't know. I know it can definitely make a difference, but if you're projecting it that long out, I don't see why you would even have the game be in Lambeau at that point of the year. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but you've got the Bears, so it's either going to be Chicago or Lambeau, and you're going to have it either way. So,
honestly, I think Lambeau is more likely to be good weather than Chicago if we get into one of those winter vortex things again.
Well, they're both going to have lake effect weather.
Yeah,
because they're both sitting on Lake Michigan. But,
yeah, that's true.
So we're going to have to wrap it up here for quick because we've got something else we got to do after this. But Mike, just real quick, what do you a way too early prediction on what the Packers could go? What their record could look like.
I'm gonna go 12-5. I think haven't dug deep into it, but I'm gonna go a little conservative and say 12-5. They'll probably split that Miami San Fran stretch. Probably drop one of the Detroit games. Toss up between that Texans Jaguars game. And then I feel like they're gonna drop a dumb game. They do every year. I know that's not really throwing it much out, but Green Bay always has that one loss where whether they're a team that looks like it's bouncing back or they're, like the Rodgers 2020 and 21 teams where you're like, they lose that Minnesota game or they lose, what's another game they lost in 2021? But yeah, like you just have those like that made no sense that they lost that game lost. So yeah, I'd say 12-5 right now before really diving into it. How about you?
Yeah, I mean, conservative wise, I would say 11-6, but just to go play medium, I would go 12-5, and optimistic, I'm going to go 13-4.
I just think the schedule really, being the second seed schedule, I think it's really played out pretty well for them this season. So,
and like we said, it's all going to depend on how the defense is handling things and how everybody can stay healthy. So.
Yeah.
What do you think, Mike? Should we wrap this up?
Yep. Let's peace out here. So, like we say every time, please check out our website, ohanapackers.org. We've got merch, including coffee, tumblers, sweaters, t-shirts, hats in multiple colors. We've got Joe, what are catchphrases?
The newest one,
he did it. Yeah.
He did it. And the newest one I put out there is kind of a twist on the Ghostbusters. I ain't afraid of the bears. So that's the newest thing on there. Be sure to pick, if you want to support us, the best way to do it right now is merch.
Yep. We really appreciate it. Also on the website, you can check out our blog posts. We have a bunch of different writers who are putting some really great media out there. We also
will be coming out soon. We just had to switch.
Yeah, we switched home servers, so just working ironing the kinks out of that. And we also have the streams of all of our podcasts and shows up on the site. So you can check that out on ohanapackers.org. Make sure that you're following the podcast on Twitter, Ohana_Packers. At Ohana_Packers. You can follow us individually, but in order to be eligible for any sort of drawings, you must be following the Twitter handle of the show, Also, we are keeping up with our Friday Ask the Fans to kind of go over topics for our weekly shows, especially as we really get into the stretch. I know OTAs are starting this week, but it's going to get slow really fast in here. So we want to hear from you guys to see what you want to hear from us. Please follow the show on your favorite podcasting apps. Give us a like and a subscribe if you're enjoying what you're hearing. Positive or negative feedback, we want to hear all of that in your comments because we want to be producing the content you're looking for. Well, Joe, we know where the Packers are going to be and who they're playing at every week along the way of the 18-week 2024 season. Here's to the start of OTAs, and we'll be sure to check back in with you guys on next week's show in terms of how everyone's looking. What am I saying? They're going to all be great. That's how what OTAs are. Everyone's doing great. But for Iowa Joe, I'm Mike. Go Pack Go, and aloha.